So, some words and their origin. Let's start with salary. Salary comes from Latin salarium, which is salt. Salt was very valuable throughout the Roman Empire, and salarium was an allowance associated with purchasing or maintaining access to salt. So it's not necessarily direct payment in salt. Robot, the word robot, Czech Republic, from Czech robota, meaning forced labor. I believe Robins in Russian also means, or Rob in Russian also means slave or rob, coined by Czech writer Karel Čapek in the 1920 play. Muscle, it's ancient Rome, it's from Italy, from the Latin musculus, meaning little mouse. Romans thought moving muscles looked like mice running under the skin. Panic, ancient Greece, named after the Greek god Pan. Travelers believe Pan could cause sudden irrational fear. That was the god's power, and that causes panic. Quarantine, it's from Venice, Italy, from Italian quaranta, 40, or quartet, or things with four. Quarters, 25% or whatever. Actually, that's different. During the Black Death, ships were isolated for 40 days before entering port, and that was quaranta or quarantine. I think that one's quite relevant these days. Window, Scandinavia, Old Norse, from Old Norse vindaga, literally means wind eye. Vindaga, so that's where the window comes from. So it's a wind, the eye of the wind. Or you have an eye on the wind, I guess. Whiskey comes from Scotland, also Ireland, from Gaelic, uisce, bitha, if I'm pronouncing that right, means water of life, and that's whiskey. That's pretty cool. The whiskey is water of life. I think that's a fun thing is to cheers when you drink whiskey with people, if people do these days. I think everyone's drinking espresso martinis. Goodbye is from England, evolved from God be with ye. Over centuries, it became goodbye. So God be with you is goodbye. That's very common in many languages. I speak some Persian, so Khoda Hafez is God be with you when you say goodbye. So it's kind of interesting. Mortgage comes from France, of all places. That's interesting. From Old French, mort, gage, or gage, literally death pledge, because the agreement ends only when repaid or defaulted. That's crazy. Mort. And mort, mort is everywhere. In Armenian, mortel, like a mortem kiz, again, I'll kill you, or I don't know. There's other ones with mernel, and so the mort is something that I think a lot of umeret in Russian and I think in Persian similar too. But anyways, so mortgage, I like that one. I like so far I like quarantine and mortgage. Candidate, that's ancient Rome, Italy, from Latin candidatatus. I think a lot of people know this in candidatatus, if I'm pronouncing that right. Roman politicians wore bright white togas to symbolize honesty, and that's that candidatatus thing. Villain, which is medieval French. It's a French. It comes from French vilain, or if I'm pronouncing that right, originally meant a farm worker or someone from rural estate. I don't really get that one, but villain. Assassin, it's Middle East, Persian, Syrian thing, associated with the medieval Nizari Ismailis, active in Persia and Syria, Europe. Crusaders spread the word into European language. Earlier it said something else. I actually had this thing prompted twice. It said, hush, let's go back. Oh, I guess it changed the words. Let's see. Assassin. Linked to medieval sect, sometimes called Hush Shashin, though the exact origin is debated. So interesting how it changed. I kind of asked for the more context for the prompting, and then this is all just prompted, by the way. But anyways, let's continue. Awful comes from England, originally meant full of awe. It describes something majestic or inspiring before changing to very bad. So somehow it changed. I guess sometimes meanings change altogether. Not to say any political party is correct or not correct, but as I understand it, the more liberal party a long time ago, the more progressive one was the Republican Party. And then there was another party that was the more conservative one. Eventually the Republican Party now is the more conservative ones, the ones that own the stuff, are a bit richer. You know what I mean? I'm not very political, but you get my point. Daisy, it comes from England, from Old English dagis ege, means day's eye, because the flower opens with the sun. That's interesting. So I think a lot of these are very interesting, and then that one's cool too. So day's eye is a daisy. Yeah, that's cool. Breakfast comes from England, from Old English, literally break the fast. Oh, when you break You're fast, you have breakfast. That's wonderful. That's a very easy one to remember. I think that's a fun one to talk about because a lot of people do fasting at nighttime. I'm doing it now. Anyway, that's cool. You break your fast, that's when you have breakfast. Nightmare, which is from England. The mare, which is an evil spirit in Germanic folklore, believed to sit on sleeper's chest. Nice, ancient Rome, Italy, from Latin nescius, ignorant. It means gradually shifting through foolish, precise, and eventually pleasant. So that's nice. He's very nice. That's interesting. So Latin nescius or nescius, which is ignorant. It means gradually shifting through. Interesting. Alcohol, Arabian Peninsula. That's very ironic. From Arabic alcohol. Alcohol is, I think, or alcohol is maybe in Persian too, the way of saying alcohol. Originally referred to very fine cosmetic powder before later being applied to purified substances and eventually distilled spirits. So actually that does make sense. They do have this type of cosmetic stuff in Arabic countries. But anyways, clue, England, this is where the video all started from my interest in the word clue. From Greek mythology, originally spelled clue, C-L-E-W, meaning a ball of thread, inspired by the Greek story of Ariadne giving a thread to Theseus to escape the labyrinth. And that's your clue. You have a clue, you have a thread. Because originally spelled clue, it means a ball of thread. If you have a ball of thread, you have a clue. So this term, they say, you don't got a clue. I find it interesting because you don't even have one little string to escape the labyrinth of understanding, which I find interesting. And then the last one, sincere, ancient Rome, Italy, from Latin sincerus, meaning clean or pure. The popular story that it means without wax, sine cera, is a myth. Historians do not support that origin. Interesting. So the last part is many everyday English words actually come from Latin, ancient Rome, Old French, Old English, Old Norse, Greek, Arabic, Celtic language, because English absorbed vocabulary from many cultures over the last 1,500 years. So what's interesting here is I asked for 20 words and the origin, but because I asked it in English, it gave me 20 English words. And so because I get English words, I get a lot of European history. If I ask for, let's say, 20, let's just say, German words, which history or peoples do those words derive from? And this is kind of what I want to know is if you go more back, if German is influencing English, then what influences German is Latin and Sanskrit and Persian and Arabic a little bit and Greek, right? We got some Greek in this list, but it's interesting how, so what influences 20 cool, interesting origins of Greek words, and that's kind of the next thing I want to know, right? And let's go back another step. And ancient Greece, what about the ancient Greek language? Where does it get its stuff from? And eventually we'll get turtles on turtles, right? Because the idea, yes, Proto-Indo-European, Persian and Hindi. Ancient Greek comes from those places. Anatolian neighbors, the Phoenicians, the ancient Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, it's, yes, and, Armenians, so Proto-Indo-European refers to Greek, Armenian, Indo-Iranian, Italic, Celtic, or Celtic, Germanic, Slavic, etc. So I think there's something wonderful about the world in the sense that, and so, Armenians borrowed from Greeks as well. And I just think there's something wonderful about the world where English, you learn about Europe, and Europe, you learn about India and Iran, and things like Mesopotamia and Assyria that don't exist anymore in the same sense that, and Phoenicians that, of course, are the Lebanese now, but in a way they don't exist in a way they kind of do exist. I think the world is just fascinating because of that reason. And what comes before Indo-European is the real question, and that's not about interesting words anymore, but we don't know Proto-Indo-European. Those linguists have been able to reconstruct. So unknown languages, then Proto-Indo-European, then Greek, Armenian, Latin, Sanskrit, German, Celtic, and then modern languages. So we don't have the language before 4,500 BC, which means more than 6,000 years ago. The world's a bit of a mystery for us, it seems like. There is a proto-world that's 50 to 100,000 years old, but Who knows? And that's just what I want to share today because I think that's interesting and I want to talk about that with people.